Now, KMJ's Sunday Conversation with your host, Alexandre Balakian. Sponsored by Gar Bennett. At Gar Bennett, we help growers feed the world.
Good Sunday morning, February 9th, 2025. Welcome into an all-new Super Bowl edition of Sunday Conversation. I'm your host, Alexandre Balakian. All right, here's my promise to all of you out there. Unlike 60 Minutes, this program will never edit out the word salads. So if the FCC is listening, I'm making your job a little easier these days. How about some quick housekeeping duties right now? Sunday Conversation 24/7 on KMJNow.com, Spotify, Apple, wherever you podcast, any show, anytime, anywhere. And you can also watch us on YouTube at KMJ Sunday Conversation. Or make it easy on yourself. Listen on KMJ 105.9 FM or the Mothership 580 AM every Sunday starting at 9 a.m. All right, as mentioned, it is Super Sunday. Much more on the Eagles and Chiefs, Taylor and Trump and the Big Easy a little bit later here in the show. We want to begin with the Super Bowl of Ag shows that will kick off once again in the heart of the South Valley. The 58th Annual World Ag Expo. It's a massive global event. It attracts agriculture A-listers, dignitaries, along with more than 100,000 people from 70 countries. So joining me today, the MVP who quarterbacks this landmark event, as I managed to squeeze in all of my Super Bowl references there.
That was good.
World Ag Expo Chairwoman Connie Conway, who, oh, by the way, Connie, say hello. You've made probably just as many appearances on this show as I have.
I'm great. Thanks for hanging out with me, Alexandre.
And Connie, I want to begin with our best friend, Mother Nature. Has the rain muddied up the set just a bit?
Just a little bit, but it's really perfect, actually. We always pray for a little bit of rain during the farm show because, it's the World Ag Expo, farm show, because it gives the farmers a chance to stop working and come to the show.
This event is so massive. Give me a sense of the economic impact, not only in the Central Valley, but really the region here.
Well, the entire valley really benefits from this show. It's about, I think, I want to remember exactly that. I don't want to misquote the right numbers. But the economic impact is to, every hotel is filled between Fresno and Bakersfield, and hard to get a room. And then there's the impact on your restaurants and, gas. just everything you can imagine with that amount of people coming in. So that's part of the impact. Then there's, for the nonprofits, what we do at the World Ag Expo is we are a nonprofit, and we allow nonprofits, I think there's 35 of them or so that come in and serve food and sell their wares. And that impact goes into them, which then flows into the community. So it's millions of dollars, literally. And people, I think, really look forward to that and that economic boost.
A lot of bells and whistles, I imagine, coming in on display. Give me a sense of what we're going to see.
We have something we call the Top 10 New Products competition every year. So people apply for this, and it really is a competition. So in this year's winners, we're seeing things from AI to precision farming and sustainable solutions, and that's usually what we try for. So in looking at I'm cheating and looking at my notes, Alexandre, and it tells me that we really generate, I said millions, 52 million annually to local economies. So it is totally amazing. So we support over 500 jobs. We contribute to 20 million in labor income, and the World Ag Expo generates substantial social impacts as a key supporter of the ag industry. So back to the top 10, it's something that we've done every year, and it just gets better and better. The top 10 products, they come, they're featured, and when they win that award from the World Ag Expo, they can advertise for a year, our product won. Last year we had a drone out there picking fruit. I don't know why I'm fixated with that, but I got fixated with that.
Give me some names. Name drop for me a little bit. Who's going to be in attendance?
Interestingly enough, we will have quite a few state legislators, some former state legislators, but we will have our current Secretary of Agriculture for California, but also the former Secretary, A.G. Karamura, will be there, and kind of headlining for us at the opening ceremonies. Speaker will be Sunny Wright McPeak. She may be a well-hidden dignitary, if that makes sense. Sunny grew up on a dairy farm in Merced. She's a former county supervisor. She's done many things. She was a Secretary of Business, Housing, and Transportation during the Schwarzenegger regime. And she also was the first chair of the California Partnership for the San Joaquin Valley. So she now runs the CETF, California Emerging Technology Fund, and they are putting broadband literally every rural place you can imagine. So she has brought her, they're going to have a forum. We're going to have all of those people I mentioned, plus more, speaking. And really, it's such a great blend. You know, we are the experts, we feel, as far as farm shows goes, because we're ag and technology.
Did you invite President Trump?
You know, I didn't.
You didn't?
I didn't invite him because...
Really?
Well, we wouldn't have a farm show if Trump came.
You think so?
Yeah, because you have to block off the highway and you have to block off the roads when you're trying to get 100,000 people someplace.
Yeah, but he could have come in just for the opening ceremony and then took off, right?
I just heard today that we're going to have a flyover. And
flyover.
From Lemoore, it'll be an F-18 and an F-35. But maybe it's not too late. I can ask Trump to fly over on Air Force One.
There you go.
We just can't let him out because we couldn't have a show.
You know, we are losing more and more farms, and really those family farms, the small farms here in the Central Valley. What is the outlook over time? Is the future not so bright?
I'm very, very worried about that in one of my lives, because I've had so many. When I was the executive director for the Farm Service Agency for the state of California, it led me to even more insight into ag and what's going on. And without getting too far down the road, it's policies. At this state, people feel like they're just trying to drive agriculture out. And that's a national security. That is a food security issue. And I mean, I just heard today about somebody that, you know, that it's going to be a solar farm now. And that to me is tragic. I mean, we grow over a variety of 350 crops in the state of California. The world depends on it. But I feel like sometimes policy in California is anti-ag. I am looking forward to this term of the president. He's already been, in fact, and President Trump, impactful with water, all the things that farmers need to succeed. Some regulations that make sense. You know, the economy of what they've really done to agriculture, in my opinion, is we have what we call grandfather farms. Mm-hmm. They're just grandfathered in under old permits. But people complain, well, it's factory farming and it's corporate farming. When you have to spend $1.5 million to do an EIR, that's economy of scale. So you can't milk 250 cows.
You know,
at that scale.
How has the World Ag Expo over the years really become the gold standard for this type of showcase, and really the technology that plays really a major role in how farmers operate? Because before it was just an ag show. Now it is very global, 70 countries, 100,000 people. It is the event. How did it get from just a little old something to the very biggest?
Well, it really started, as you said, very humbly as a tractor or equipment show at the Tulare Fairgrounds, and it's progressed over the years. I think what sets us apart is the fact that there are other large shows, other places, but they mainly feature row crops. I mean, what they do. With our variety of agriculture in California, we're able to showcase all of that, and it really has gotten the world's attention. One of the keys to our success, really, though, has been the volunteers. They're kind of the lifeblood of this show, and people sometimes take their vacation from work to come out and work and help us. I am a volunteer there and have been for years. It's a spirit of camaraderie, and I think it really makes a difference. It's a personal touch, and it's also access. When the people come from all over the world, the farm show, ag show, is 3 days, but we do the week before, we're doing farm tours right now for foreign countries. And there's so much to see in one spot because California is so unique when it comes to agriculture.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, but Conway is back with us. And we're going to really get into the meat of this because, President Trump and his executive orders are going to play a big role in what we see over the next week, especially when it comes to the conversations that will take place in the Ag Show, or I should say the World Ag Expo coming up. We're back with the chairwoman for the World Ag Expo here on Sunday Conversation right after this. Welcome back to Sunday Conversation, episode 5 here. We're with the World Ag Expo chairwoman, Conway. Opening ceremonies will begin bright and early Tuesday morning for the 58th annual World Ag Expo in Tulare. So there is an impressive stat that you want to reel off before we get into really how President Trump and maybe some of his policies are going to really headline the Ag Expo this year, Connie. And that is not only the amount of people that are going to filter in and the amount of money that's going to filter in, but why people come here to do this expo.
Well, I think we're obviously the largest in the world, and it's very attractive because in addition to the exhibitors that we have, and they bring their best and the newest of equipment and products, but we have over 80 educational seminars, workshops, demonstrations. So it's just packed full of activities. There's so much to see and do, and we even have a Toyota Tundra giveaway that benefits Valley Children's.
That's awesome.
So we're doing everything right.
I'm expecting that President Trump's policies, executive orders are going to be a headline discussion. And I'm wondering if at the Ag Expo, if President Trump's mission to deport illegal immigrants is going to be a part of that, because a majority of farm workers and even farming companies in the region have this narrative that they fear that ICE agents are showing up in the fields. And I'm wondering if that's going to probably be either an educational moment where there's awareness about this or what have you.
I would anticipate that there might be conversation. I would say as an entity, we are non-political, so we really don't, although politicians attend, we really won't be talking about politics per se or per issue. As people gather and have conversation, it may come up, but we don't do that. We are very agnostic when it comes to that type of policy. Although we will speak to, what is the latest policy from the California Air Resources Board. And I'm sure there'll be conversation about the fact that now with Trump, CARB seems to have, pulled back that mandate that you have to have an electric car by 2030 or whatever the day was, or for trucks or for tractors. So while it will probably enter into the conversation, we don't as an entity. We are a nonprofit, and so we won't have direct political debate.
Do you want to address, aside from being the chairwoman on this topic, do you want to address that on the side?
Sure. I mean, yeah.
If you want.
As long as people don't, mix the two.
I don't want to mix the two. So time out from World Ag Expo from here on out. Not from here on out, just this one area. But address, I guess, if there's that narrative out there. You deal with a lot of farmers. You hear from a lot of farmers. Is there that conversation happening? Well,
the calls that I get and the people that I have spoken to are wondering, the Trump position on that side of the aisle would say, we're going after the criminals. We want to get the criminals, the gangs, and all that goes with that out. That is our primary target. Somehow there's another narrative that, he's out to get everybody. So I suppose it depends upon what side of the aisle you're on. But I think in the past few days, you should have seen that it's all criminals. They are not looking for, they are looking for children, the children that are lost that they can't find. But ICE isn't really involved in that. It's really about targeting the hardcore criminals first. Will some people maybe get swept up in it? Maybe. But I believe, as with anything, Super Bowl, it's a political football. So one side wants to scare everybody and bring a narrative that they're coming to get your grandmother. I really just don't believe that. To start with, it's really about hardcore criminals. Down the road, that could change. But at this exact moment, when I read the policy and when I see what they're doing, it's really criminals is who they're after.
All right, back to World Ag Expo, time back in. I think obviously maybe the biggest discussions will revolve around the biggest resource, which is water.
Yes.
And I'm wondering, a lot of people are wondering, hey, the federal pumps that were turned on by President Trump's order, some farmers are saying, whoa, that may be flooding our farms or flooding our reservoirs. That's no good. Is that a problem?
It was an initial concern. Everybody was, let's use the word, spun up. But I think that that has calmed down now as the flows that were released, and it wasn't as much as originally expected. And I think with everything, there's a learning curve. I think now that it has been redirected that Northern California is really the water that needs to be shared. They have the water that's shared, not so much the Central Valley. So no one was flooded that I'm aware of, and I'm pretty sure I would have heard that. And there was concern at first. It's always a concern, I think, when the federal government does something. People don't, they're not used to it. And I think part of the problem in California, we're so used to the heavy-handed way policy is administrated in California that when the federal government loosens up and says, hey, we need to give people water, it was initially a concern. I believe that has been down. Our local congressmen all worked together to kind of figure that out. Now there's some policy bills being shared. And so I noticed another one today about endangered species, and that water won't need to be saved in the Delta. So some of the Northern California water will then be released. And that's actually the water that can benefit the Central California and also Southern California.
A little bit about the Farm Bill. That's, and correct me if I'm wrong, the last time I checked, it has not crossed President Trump's desk.
No.
Right. So there's still that to be taken care of.
Yes.
How big of a cloud is that kind of hovering over, even at a time when you're hosting a World Ag Expo like this?
Well, the Farm Bill is always a concern and you have to start really early to try and renew it and what's going to be in it. And then sometimes it gets tied to the budget, or it might get tied. It's always a worry for me that it's not like a standalone. There's always political maneuvering with the Farm Bill. And to me, that shows how important the Farm Bill is, because it's used as a political football since it's Super Bowl Sunday.
I want to finish with this. We only got about a few seconds left, and probably this is probably time out from World Ag Expo, but President Trump is calling for an investigation into the spending of high-speed rail, and where the Inspector General has now said it's nowhere near on time for completion. How much do you think that high-speed rail will be completely derailed because it has wiped out farms?
That has always been a big concern. All the farmers I know, I think I was in the assembly at the time, they were promised, oh, well, yeah, we're going to cut your farm in half, but we're going to pay you, and we're going to take care of it. It is so far behind. It is so over budget, and it's really not. It's not high-speed rail. It's fancy Amtrak. I think that most Californians would applaud that the federal government is going to step up and maybe do something about this before any more money gets wasted.
Real quick, will you be going back to work under the Trump administration?
I would love to go back under the administration as I did before, and I have let them know. Sometimes if we forget, it's only been 2 weeks. Right. So sometimes these appointments take a long time. I'm hoping that I will hear something sooner rather than later, but I have indicated to them that I would love to go back and do it again. You always learn something the first time. The second time I would really enjoy that opportunity.
Well, my co-host, no, she's the World Ag Expo chairwoman, Connie Conway. Thank you so much for being here. We'll see you next week. It's a big week. So good to really showcase something that is so important to the Valley. Appreciate the time.
I appreciate you having me on and the opportunity to talk, Alex, on anytime. I'm ready.
Always, always. All right, we're back with our panel here on Sunday Conversation. You're listening to KMJ. Welcome back to Sunday Conversation. We want to remind everyone this segment brought to you by my friends at the Press Box Sports Grill, where the game's on, the food's great, and the drinks are flowing, especially today. Press Box, the place to be on Super Sunday. It's time to bring in our super panel this week, pun intended here. Who's going to drop the mic? That's because we have Fresno City Council President Mike Karbassi is here. And then we have political pundit Michael Manouel Jr. Or do we call you the newest Kevin McCarthy antagonist? Do we add that to your resume?
That's not new. I've been antagonizing him since 1993. So,
would you like to punctuate any of your social media comments right here on the show, or you feel like it's filtered out of your system?
Oh, I mean, no, it's definitely not out of my system. Any Republican that goes on any media and expresses astonishment at all the government waste being uncovered and pretends like they weren't there voting on all the reconciliation bills that funded it is dead to me.
There you go.
Period.
There you have it. Mike, the other side of Mike. There you go.
I've enjoyed watching the story.
The social storm. All right, speaking of a social storm, we're going to start things off with high-speed rail. First of all, Trump is calling for an investigation. Assemblyman Tagipa calls for detailed funding plan with his new bill. Then there's Assemblywoman Alexandra Macedo, who wants to redirect the funds to wildfires and water protection. So here's the big conversation, I guess, now. Are we ultimately going to halt construction and funding for high-speed rail? Because I say that, Mayor Jerry Dyer on the Ray Appleton show this week believes that high-speed rail should change the route, are you ready? From Fresno to Vegas. Does that make sense? Is it time to change the route? Which mic am I starting with?
To start with me.
All right, go ahead.
This, from the very beginning, from the time the bond was on the ballot, the initial $9.5 billion or whatever it was, this was a solution looking for a problem. Okay, and so it went from $9 billion to $33 billion to $100 billion, now probably going to be $400 or $500 billion if it's ever finished. The only reason you have to finish it, besides the disruption of farmland and all the inconvenience that's been caused by all of it, is because they built these gaudy flyover bridges made out of concrete all over the place. And if you don't finish it, those are just going to stand there and become graffiti monuments for time immemorial. So that's probably the only reason you need to finish it. But I don't know how it's going to get done because Trump doesn't want to spend the money. And when you take federal money, you consent to a federal investigation. That investigation is going to be, I think, very damning in many, many ways.
I mean, I would love to see an audit. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but Council President?
Well, look, it's really difficult to defend the history of high-speed rail, but I can tell you since I've been a councilman in the last 5 years, the commission has been a lot more transparent, has done a lot much better job of managing our tax dollars, because I do believe there has been waste historically, and we're going to see a lot of that, like Mike just said. As a person who represents Fresno, I have to put my Fresno hat on. It is better to have that money here. Is it the most efficient use of money? Probably not. I think it's political red meat, so you're going to have people go after it. But I hope that the federal administration, the state, continue to support this project, whether it goes to Vegas or whether it goes to LA. The point is, the destination is Fresno. It can benefit Fresno, but it's not going to be an easy path ahead by any means.
So with all that being said, I mean, does it make sense? I mean, Mayor Dyer has this in his head that it's better to go through a lot of that desert land than try to kind of go through, obviously, more farmland, not mountains when you talk about Merced to Bakersfield, but it's a longer haul, if you will. Does Fresno to Vegas make sense? I don't even know what decade that would end up in.
It's unrealistic. You have to go through a complete entitlement process to acquire the land. You got to go through environmental studies, permitting. You have multi-jurisdictional issues in doing all of that. We've already overpaid for massive amounts of land in the valley through a lot of farming communities. There's a big scandal in Caltrans over this too, and the appraisals that were used to acquire that land. It's too bad the state won't investigate itself, because of the people that have been in charge of this project are in charge of the state. They're not going to investigate themselves. So No, I don't see it going to Vegas ever, and I don't think they should redirect the route ever.
I can't disagree with Mike. I think he's correct.
Well, that was a long answer there, Mr. Karbassi.
Well, look, when you talk common sense, how can I argue with it?
Right. No, I hear you. All right, let's kind of move on from that and talk about something that did not move through the Clovis City Council. And that was, Diane Pierce, Clovis City Mayor Pro Tem now, Diane Pierce, was trying to really move the discussion on the city of Clovis classifying themselves as a non-sanctuary city. It never really got to the agenda. It was never voted on or anything like that. So they decide against discussing the item. Well, first, from your point of view, Council President, is that a conversation that could come about in the agenda for Fresno?
It could. So when you look at what happened in Clovis, you had Drew Bessinger and Matt Vaskell, who are law enforcement, former law enforcement. And it was from a public safety perspective, they kind of balked at the idea. Diane's a good person. We disagree on this issue. My perspective is I'm not here to talk about immigration. I'm here to talk about public safety. Drug dealers, pimps, human traffickers love people that are vulnerable. And unfortunately, that bleeds into our lives as citizens of this community. They target people that are illegal. We have a policy in the city of Fresno, policy 428. It's a PD policy. We've had it since 2016. We don't pick a side. We just want victims to report crimes. If they feel like we're cooperating with ICE, they will not report crimes. That's what the data shows us. That's what law enforcement tells me. I trust our officers. I trust our chief, and that's what I'm following. And that's the perspective the two council members looked at when they didn't want to even bring up the item.
Is Clovis sanctuary or neutral or non-sanctuary? I don't even know.
I have no idea.
They haven't been classified as anything, but they were going for non-sanctuary to kind of, I guess it was almost to prove a point against some of this, like Huntington Beach, I think, said we were non-sanctuary. So going along the lines of that.
I think the whole thing is unnecessary. Unless you're trying to reverse a sanctuary policy, I don't think there should even be a non-sanctuary policy. If you don't have a sanctuary policy, by definition, you are non-sanctuary. I think despite the proclamations of Mayor Dyer and others, getting in the way of ICE agents doing their jobs is a big mistake for any city right now, given the overwhelming public support to do something about what has been 30 years of neglect at the borders. And so I love what's happening across the country in that regard with gangs, criminals, human traffickers, as Michael said. It's going to take us years just to get them out. Years. So focus on that, and the country's going to be better for it.
Is there, and I don't want to have a city council meeting here. That is not what I'm doing. Okay. No Brown Act violation. I promise you. Is there a way to say, hey, we want to welcome all without saying you're a non-sanctuary or sanctuary city? Is there a way to say that?
What do you mean exactly?
Meaning in like you said, public safety. So public safety is saying, hey, we're welcoming all, but we want to keep everybody safe. We want to root out criminals. Yeah. Criminals are not welcome.
Here's the thing. They're not welcome in this town. That's why you've seen violent crime go down. You've seen us support only budgets that increase the number of cops. Right. Because it makes a difference. And that's a priority. Despite having 6 Democrats on the council, every budget increases the number of cops, and that makes a statement. I want to be very clear about that. So this is a federal issue. We're not talking about getting in the way of ICE. We just need to worry about what's happening on the ground. That's our priority.
All right, I want to move on to the homeless issue, something you've been on the front lines with the city attorney, Andrew Jans, even the new city council member, Nick Richardson. And I really want to get your perspective on this, Michael, because you're in the insurance corporation. And maybe you see this now with a lot of the wildfires and people who are now looking for new homes and are basically homeless. Does the problem remain out of control because the money and the billions that have been spent don't really take care of the problem? I think that's what we've seen. We've also seen the project off-ramp where you put them in hotels and then now they're back out, and some of them are permanent housing, some are back on the freeways. What really is the solution here as you created, Mr. Karbassi, another ordinance that says we're seeing homeless people being dumped into our city from other cities, and that's going to be a fine towards the people that do that. What's gonna actually help the homeless here? Because this has been a problem that no matter how you look at it, no matter what we see, no matter how we talk about it, it's persistent.
I'm going to say something that's going to make your listeners want to pull their hair out of their head. In Fresno, not the state of California, in Fresno, there's actually been movement and improvement on this problem. It doesn't feel that way, but the numbers show that. Yes, there are people in Project Off-Ramp or Project Home Key that are going into transitional housing and then permanent housing. In fact, Councilmember Nick Richardson was just on the point in time count. That data is going to show you significant declines in the unhoused because they are now in services. Granted, as taxpayers, we're paying for that, but they're no longer out there. The biggest problem here isn't the city of Fresno, it's state policies and a state that is far too progressive in Sacramento, doesn't want to deal with the problems, and just merely wants to say, oh, those poor folks, let them, if they're schizophrenic, let them rely on outpatient medicine, that's a solution, and they have civil rights. Yet they are suffering out there, they're human beings suffering, and they're victimizing the rest of us. They're not well. So the reason why I put forward the ordinance with Councilman Richardson, working with and City Attorney Jans, we are doing a decent job that we do believe other cities, not in Fresno County, outside are bringing folks into this community because we have bed space, because we have services, because we're working with the county. We are a target now because we're doing the job we're supposed to do. That this is a proactive measure so that our law enforcement can investigate, and every person they transport here, that city employee from whatever city or county they're from, will get potentially up to 6 months in jail and $1,000 fine. But the point is, we're going to fight back. Santa Cruz that has done this. I think we're the second city in California to do this.
Interesting.
It is indisputable that the amount of money the state government has allocated to homeless issues has increased the amount of homelessness by the same percentage. It's indisputable. The solution, therefore, is to spend more. So we're in denial about the government being able to solve this problem. A hybrid approach is phenomenal. I love what the mission's doing. I love what Poverella's doing. I love some of the limited government programs that are going on here locally, as Michael attested to. You've got to have an all-hands approach, but you also have to not do so much that you're attracting people. So you have to thread the needle. You can't be too good at it, because then all the cities that aren't good at it will bring their people here.
Right.
So, but the state has failed, completely failed. And it's doubling down on failure every year in its budget process. And that is maddening, because they're actually punishing people by spending more money on them.
All right, I want to get to our Super Sunday big picks here. All right, Eagles or Chiefs, who wins? Who wants to go first?
This is the most controversial question you've asked all day.
I know, I'm so sorry.
No comment.
No comment.
Hey, there's a saying we had when I was at Fresno State: win or lose, we still booze. We're going to have a good time on Sunday. I'll put
There
it
you
that
go, okay.
Hate the Chiefs.
Because they're winners or
Yes,
what?
yes. Because I don't like a lot of the calls that they seem to get when the games are on the line all the time. And I don't like they held Nick Bosa on every play last year in the Super Bowl, because I'm a 49er guy.
Oh, boy.
But I do think Saquon Barkley is somebody that can really change this game. And I do think that Kansas City is vulnerable against the run. And so I think it's a pick'em game. I'm rooting for Philadelphia.
All right. Okay, last question. Very controversial. Now, Council President, you have to answer this question. Who gets the bigger applause, Taylor Swift or President Trump?
I think, given the results of the election, President Trump will.
I installed plexiglass in front of my TV so I could throw beer at it every time Taylor Swift appeared on the screen, and I think Trump will get a lot more applause.
There you have it. There's the panel on Super Sunday. We have Mike and Mike in the morning. There you go. A new show just translated out of all of that. You're listening to Sunday Conversation. We're back with our postscript, and you know what I'm going to talk about? Who's really the NFL GOAT? That is next on KMJ. Welcome back to Sunday Conversation. Finally, we're going to get social here. As a former sportscaster of 17 years, today marks a rare day in sports history. And it's not the fact that Kansas City has tried to become the first team in the National Football League to three-peat, or that President Trump is the first sitting president to attend the Super Bowl, or the fact that Taylor Swift, who will be in attendance, is more popular than the person actually performing at halftime. That would be Kendrick Lamar. Now, if he's smart, he's going to bring the Village people as his surprise guest and have President Trump rise up on some stage in a cloud of dry ice and bust out with that Trump touchdown dance. But forget all about that. The headline for today's game is Tom Brady's legacy of being the NFL GOAT already in jeopardy. It's bad enough his supermodel of an ex-wife, Giselle, just gave birth with their new boyfriend there of just 2 years. It could go from bad to worse for Tom. Brady will have a front row seat to the possible new coronation of the GOAT. After all, he's calling the game. If Patrick Mahomes beats the Eagles, it's not only another Lombardi trophy he's going to add to his Hall of Fame cave, it'll ultimately be the revenge Mahomes has been stewing over since losing to Brady and the Buccaneers. A three-peat means Brady may lose his crown as the NFL GOAT. Yes, Brady has 7 Super Bowl rings and 5 Super Bowl MVPs, but Mahomes is now in his 5th Super Bowl in just 7 seasons. Brady played well into his 40s to get there. Now, if you run the numbers, Tom Brady still owns Patrick Mahomes. But this is what sports junkies and pundits do. They make a living by making the argument that Mahomes is no longer in Brady's shadow. It's vice versa. But remember this. Tom Brady won his Super Bowls at times with less talent. For the most part, really did lack a premier running back. Brady also had to put up with that cuddly guy named Bill Belichick. So in the end, if Mahomes three-peats, yeah, Brady never did that. But that's the only thing Brady didn't do. Now, if Mahomes wins another 2 Super Bowls, 3 Super Bowls, that's a whole other NFL stratosphere. But for today and tomorrow and the entire offseason, if Patrick Mahomes is in good hands with Allstate and wins another, that's all he's won, a 4th Super Bowl. Tom Brady still has 3 more, and that buys him a lot more time as the king on NFL's Mount Rushmore. That's my time. Have a great Super Sunday. Be safe. A quick shout out to my MVP sponsors, Gar Bennett, we help growers feed the world, and the Press Box Sports Grill. We will see you next Sunday, 9 a.m. right here on KMJ.